disclosure takes place. It sanctifies all of the independent efforts immediately overnight. But the government can't step forward and say, oh, don't go there, it can't work. Hell, they just acknowledge it.
Power application, really, the more load you put on it, the faster it goes, and
media,
the colder
everyone
it gets.
getting excited. It's like, oh, look, 1% better than the one that was published last year. And they're all very excited about that. And for us, we're appalled. We're going, I can't believe that they're accepting that a 1% advance is considered an advance.
And welcome to the New Earth Science and Technology Media Series. My name is Lindsay Briner, and today it is such a joy to have Doug Linman with us, who is our New Earth nanoscientist and nanotechnologist. He is an inventing engineer with over 40 years of experience bringing solar liquid power to New Earth communities and worldwide. It's just so exciting to have you here with us, Doug, because I know that nanotechnology and nanoscience is one of the most rapidly advancing science and technologies today. So yes, thank you so much for being here. I just want to begin our discussion by asking you, the name of your company is Molecular Quartermasters. Can you just share with us what that means and how it came about?
Yes, it was an interesting conversation with the group. I come from background in military and defense systems and aerospace through Boeing and NASA. So we have a very strange way of looking at things, and when we started this trek 10 years ago, looking at a new renewable energy source, we were trying to solve a problem, and in doing so, we went down the molecular route, having met Dr. Richard Smalley in 2003, I think. And so he told us that nanoscience was really where we needed to be, because all of us are chemists, electrochemical engineers, and also electrical engineers. So we didn't know what that meant at the time, but we started looking at nanoscience as the solution of coming up with a new renewable energy source to solve a strange problem. But once we figured that out, we talked about what the company's name would be over probably 8 or 9 months. And we came up with all sorts of crazy things. But at the end of the day, all of us had ex-military backgrounds, and we were thinking about where we were going to take, this new renewable energy source and other things that we were going to do in nanoscience. And we remembered that when we were all in the military, the quartermaster was the person in charge of giving you everything you needed to live. Your food, your clothing, your shelter, everything. So we sort of put that aside for a second and said, well, that was kind of an interesting idea. And then we were working in, solar sciences and renewable energy sciences and so forth. But we couldn't come up with, a really interesting name until one of the guys said, listen, why don't we just combine what we do in molecular science with how we're going to deliver it to all people, and to fit their needs. So once we combine molecules and quartermaster, and we slowly but surely cut it down to molecular quartermasters, and then we cut that down to MQ. So MQ is the name of the corporation, and it's been in existence since last year as a name. We've been in existence for almost 10 years working on this, but our combined efforts and our ages as well, we're all reasonably over 50, and we've been working on these kind of interesting sciences most of our lives. So our legacy, if you would, is to leave the Earth with and our children and our grandchildren and other people's children and grandchildren, leave them with a legacy of being able to obtain a renewable energy source that was affordable for all people. We have been all over the world. And because of that, we've seen some extraordinary things which we knew we could solve using molecular science. So at the nanoscale, we created what we call solar liquid power, or SLP. And SLP will be what we deliver as quartermasters of molecular science.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And can you just say, what is a liquid colloid for our audience? What does that actually mean?
Liquid colloid?
Yeah.
Okay. In our general way of looking at things, we would go to the store and we would buy paint for our house, for example. And you would go and get a can and you would open it up, and inside would be the paint. But you need a stir, and because it's in a liquid form, and you stir it. And then once you apply it to your house or wood or something else, it dries. And it becomes a solid at that point. A liquid colloid is exactly that. It changes from a liquid to a solid and stays that way. So once you paint your house outside, you would not expect it to keep dripping. It would just turn into a solid, and it would last 20, 25 years before you would have to repaint it. Well, when we were designing our liquid power, we had to think about how it was going to be applied to nearly everything. And we knew that we couldn't leave it in one state. It would have to transform into another state, and that state would be its final state in order to create the longevity of what it was to do. So we met all sorts of people over years, and many of these people knew us because of our backgrounds in DARPA, and NASA, and space systems, and so forth. So we were in the middle of scientists from all over the world, including Europe and the United States. And we asked them all sorts of questions about how we should approach this and what kind of things would make the most sense. And we finally concluded that coming up with a liquid colloid following a technical coating design was the best way of doing this. Because what we were going to become was a supplier of liquid power to other people's applications. We were not going to create applications. We were going to power everything else. So as an example, the president of our company is David Sears. He's a world famous and world champion race car driver. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant man. But, he deals with fast cars, and he deals with Formula Ones and Formula 2s and 3s. And so they're very, very specific cars. And their coatings are very specific. Coatings on planes are very specific. Coatings on maritime ships are very specific. Coatings on buildings, on plastics, on all sorts of things are very specific. So we knew that if we created a coating, we would have to create different versions of it in order for it to be applied and in a liquid form and dry as its final form and operate what it was going to operate for many years to come. So a liquid colloid in our world was the best solution for being able to apply our power on just about anything.
Right. And would you say that this is how you would describe your inventing use of nanoscience itself?
Yeah, I mean, if you look back prior to almost the 19th century, scientists pursued, or chemists pursued science by simply taking measurements before and after a chemical reaction. That's pretty much what they knew how to do. in the 19th century. And you consider that an external approach. It's rather like mixing pancake mix in a way. You mix pancake mix, and it looks fine as you're mixing it, but then what are you going to do with it? Well, once you put it in a pan and heat it up and so forth, it becomes something completely different. So chemists at that point and engineers were really looking at the reaction of things. All right. In our world, at the nanoscience level, we were looking at the molecular structure of things, and we were looking at what would happen if we added, as all of us grew up, H2O, for example, was water, and all of us in our biological chemistry, biology and chemistry classes got used to thinking that water was H2O. But the mixture of that can be altered dramatically to make something else if you understood how molecular science works. And the thing that made it differently when Dr. Feynman and Dr. Taniguchi and Richard Smalley and all these people started looking at the science, the nanoscience level, what made it different is that the optics of microscopes were dramatically changing. They started out in the 1980s. So before then, you're looking at chemists who were only looking at microscopes with maybe 10 or 20 or 50 times, your sight level in the early 1900s. So they weren't seeing much. They were just seeing the reaction or the colors of things. But in our world, we're seeing things at 45,000 to 65,000x. We're seeing the inside of the inside of the inside of something, and in being able to be in that whole world inside a molecule, you can see where things are possible, and you can attach things and change the molecular structure of things, and see instantly the reaction of those kind of things. In an extraordinary fashion, which all the previous sciences before all of us could never see. We tend to build things based on how we see things. Planes, for example, airplanes were envisioned because of how birds fly. And when they would look at birds under a microscope, they would see their wings and they would see their structures and they would see how the aerodynamics of things could work for a bird. So if a bird can do all those things, then maybe there's some way of building something else that can fly. But if you look at it at the nanoscale, you're seeing inside the structures of a bird's physical structure, inside their bones, inside their bone marrow, inside everything. And all of a sudden, you're seeing how every single tiny bit in their wing is reacting to something that we have never seen before these last 12 years. So if you go back 12 to 15 years, the way we approached aerodynamics, and now 12 years later, how we can see how things actually function, is going to change the future of aerodynamics and everything that we do. Because we can now, for the first time, we can see things at extraordinary levels that we could never see prior to these last 12 years.
It's fascinating.
Oh, it is. I mean, this is something that gets all of us up every morning in excitement because of all the things that can change and all the things that can positively change. NanoScience, I did a TED speech a year ago, and I remember walking onto the stage and explaining all this and showing them the state of the art of all of nanoscience, because it was the first time that anyone had seen all of the things that currently exist in nanoscience. Everybody else had been giving speeches on what they were individually doing, right? And so people from Rice University or some other university were saying, well, we're working at this scale and in our laboratories and schools, and we're doing this nanoscience project. but it was never explained to them how the bigger picture of nanoscience would affect the rest of everyone's life. It was only talking about a professor having a project in a university, for example, that was getting published a lot. And they need to publish those things in order to get funding. So those kind of things all work together. But if you look at the bigger picture, what was nanoscience going to do for the rest of the planet, other than these wonderful projects that were going on in all these universities? So what I did, instead of following sort of the fray to explain what we were doing in nanoscience, in solar liquid power, I decided to explain everything that it currently exists in nanoscience, of which one of those things, of course, would be solar liquid power. But that was only one element of the bigger world, so that people finally understood that there has been some extraordinary and pervasive work done in nanoscience that will affect all our lives. I mean, computers are being grown organically. I mean, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
The nanobots and wiffle ball cellular structures are being grown at the nano level. In the military, we use these on scuba diving outfits for SEAL training, for example. By the time they come out of the water, they are completely dry, and they're ready to go on their mission. And those are sprayed and infused with nanoparticles that essentially wipe out all their liquids as they're coming out of the water. So they're completely dry when they come out of the water.
Wow.
So
there's all these really exciting things in the future for nanoscience and nanotechnology in, as you said, material and medical uses. And I'm just wondering what else is in store for nanotechnology and nanoscience on the other side.
Well, I think what happens is that something like this, because, for example, it was only 2 years ago that you could actually get a conferred degree in a master or a bachelor's or PhD level in nanoscience. Nanoscience used to be a chapter in a chemistry book, and all of a sudden, it's its own science. It is grown and matured to such a level that it will change how we do everything. The most basic element is an atom, and a molecule is the most basic level of a compound. And I can almost see that the future will be that the periodic table will only show the individual elements that exist on our planet, but there will be a new periodic table for bonded elements, and those elements will be all reasonably all nanoscience based. There will be compounds on there that will stop cancer. There will be compounds that will build better fabrics. There will be compounds on there that will create, for example, graphene, which is a matrix of nanoparticles that is created at the desktop level and is stronger than steel. So instead of going through a huge smelting plant to build steel, at the nanoscale right now, we are building graphene, which is stronger than steel. That changes the paradigm of that whole industry completely. And it's almost lighter than most of the substances. So cars would be made differently. Our lives will change medically and health-wise. We can take all our vitamins, spraying on our food, for example, and you can take all the vitamins and nutrients you want. Of course, that's good and that's bad, because all the kids will come up and say, "Well, Mom, I don't need anything else. I can just have all the ice cream I want, because all the proteins and nutrients that you want me to have, I just sprayed on my ice cream."
Right.
I'm not getting all that. So,
that's crazy.
But there's all sorts of wonderful and good things that will be coming out of nanoscience. Nanoscience itself, what a lot of people don't recognize, is that there's a science related to it, and there's a technology related to it.
Mm-hmm.
So the science portion is really the research of all things, at the nanoscale, and it has everything to do with the discovery of things at that level and what its applications are going to be. Nanotechnology is essentially taking the result of that science and making it into something. It's going to be some kind of application, it's going to be some spray, it's going to be some kind of material, it's going to be something else. So essentially, those are all the nanotechnology ideas, and nanoscience is the discovery of something that is going to produce an X result, and that X result would go into the nanotechnology world to be matured.
And I think that brings us back to your nanotechnology, which you have invented, which I feel is the most exciting aspect of having you on board as part of the New Earth Nation Science and Technology faculty. And I'm just wondering if you could share just a little bit more about what is solar liquid power and what the future is of solar liquid power within, New Earth retreats, New Earth festivals, land and development for our communities, and even beyond New Earth Nation to reach the global audience.
Absolutely. I have, the New Earth Nation is an extraordinary project, absolutely an extraordinary project. And it's very well thought out, maturely thought out, for us to take humanity to a much better level than it is right now. I sort of grew up in thinking that there was, hopefully going to be a better time for a lot of people. I've been all over the world and I've seen terrible things. And I know that many of those things can be resolved, but most of them exist because of economic imbalance. And that's what I see that the Earth Nation vision is taking us to a much, better place. How you get there will require all sorts of interesting applications. Solar liquid power for us is a way of powering the cities and structures that the New Earth Nation will be implementing all over the world. And this could mean more things than we even understand at this point. This could mean all the lights in all the streets, all the houses, all the food and watering systems, food processing plants that could be underground, that could be powered from solar liquid power that will sit on top of the ground. I see it as a collaborative world very differently than the current one-to-one relationship that we have, that each of us have with, a power company, for example. Right now, you get power, brought into your house, and you don't share that power. It's whatever you're using, and that's how you get charged for that power. But I see a different kind of world, and I've always been looking at this for probably 20 years, that in the collaborative world, if I power a house with an excess of power, I can also help power the house next to me, and that one next to it. And all those could power a community center, and that community center could power other things. So in a more collaborative, fractal idea. So solar liquid power sort of since we're not really a panel and we're not really a thin film, and we really are a technical coating that could be applied to just about anything, it changes the dynamic of a lot of things. Because right now, if you go into a city and they go, well, why don't we power these houses by solar panels? So everyone's going to put up a certain amount of solar panels in order to do that. Individually, they're probably going to be okay. But they don't contribute to anything else. They only contribute to that one building. So what would happen if we coated posts and light posts and street lines and all sorts of things that were contributing power to everything? and it was only a coating that was doing that. As an example, all the yellow lines on the road, the yellow and white lines on the road, if they were coated with all this and a cover put on all of them, all those lines could power most of the things that we see on Earth, just by the millions of miles of those white lines. So if they were actually SLP coated, you would be getting your power from the street. And the street would be powering the houses, and the houses would be powering everything else. Essentially, what most people don't recognize is that in renewable energy, either water, wind, or solar by itself could power, individually, could power everything on Earth. And the only thing that's holding us back is the leaps that we have to take in those sciences in order to bring that power to bear.
Right.
So we, years ago, in our desire to change humanity, wanted to take a significant leap in the technologies that were already present in our lives. We didn't feel, as ex-defense people, that the commercial levels of application design were good enough for humanity. As a simple example, solar panels commercially are around 10 to 12 or 13% at the most efficient, but yet you would be paying 100% of your money to only get 13% efficiency. In my world, in the defense world, I could never build something that essentially would be the last lifeline for a soldier in the field that would be 12% efficient. That would be like giving them a rifle that only fires, 20% of the time, or giving them food that only lasts 5 days, before it disintegrates. So since our specifications in our world are so high, and natural for us to be thinking that way, our thought process for coming up with a new renewable energy source was exactly that. We set the bar so high to come up with it that we eventually hit it. So if we would have set the bar low, we would be, as you see in the media, everyone getting excited. It's like, oh, look, a new thin film just came out, and it's 1% better than the one that was published last year. And they're all very excited about that. And for us, we're appalled. We're going, I can't believe that they're accepting that a 1%, advance is considered an advance. And everything that we know as scientists and engineers, it's not. When Kennedy in '61 said, he said we're going to go to the moon, that was the first time NASA woke up in many years. They figured it out, what it would take to do that, and they went to the moon. And that's the same excitement we put in to what we do at the molecular level. We're not going to give anybody something that's 1% better than it was last year. We're going to give someone something significantly different than they have been living with all their lives. Because why go through all this if you're not going to have such a positive impact?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Doug. I feel like this is the beginning of the solar liquid power legend that you're starting. I know that New Earth Nation is just so grateful to be integrating and implementing the solar liquid power and MQ Corporation into our land and development and our retreat centers and our communities for a long-term living example for the rest of the world. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on nanoscience and nanotechnology. It's always such a joy to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
discovery of the origin of all negentropic forces in biology based on this simple frequency equation, which is the set of harmonics that makes the Schumann self-organized Gaia, the set of harmonics that cause DNA to make a soul from the moment of bliss. Any system that you need to emerge from chaos, we now know exactly, mathematically, how to do it. It's called The Origin of Biological Negentropy. It is the latest newsletter we have, fractalfields.com/negentropic fields.
I wanted to ask you about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And because I've been considering this stuff lately, as one does when we tiptoe into middle age. And it seemed to me that for recent generations, it's become a kind of catch-all connotation.